What is a class? Class is nothing but a group of objects of similar behavior and characteristics. Students may be having so many other activities, those things are hidden. So your mascot is only an abstraction of a student object. So this is nothing but data abstraction. Outside the class, no one should access the data easily. That is the concept of data encapsulation. Once the code has been written, same code can be used elsewhere or with different classes and a different application. Dear students, welcome to Computer Science classes. I am Ravi Kumar KR, lecturer in Computer Science, Vidhyaashram PU College, Temple of Excellence, Mysore. Students, let us start our discussion. Chapter 6, Object-Oriented Programming. The weightage of the chapter here is 1 2 marks question and total weightage is 2 marks. So you will get 2 marks from this chapter, Object-Oriented Programming or Object-Oriented Concepts. Now let us see, in this chapter we are going to cover these are topics: procedural programming, object-oriented programming, and what are the characteristics of OOPS or object-oriented programming, OOPS benefits, disadvantages, and applications of OOPS. Here OOPS stands for object-oriented programming or programs. Let us start with the definition of procedural programming. This is procedural programming. So this is what you have learned in our previous chapter. See, one method of programming is procedural programming. So the procedural programming, it focus on the instructions in order to perform desired computation, and therefore it highlights more on doing the things like algorithm. So what is procedural programming? So this type of a programming where it concentrates on the procedures, or so it follows the algorithm. So what is algorithm? Algorithm is nothing but step-by-step procedure to solve a problem. Similarly, so in procedural programming, it's going to execute or it process the instructions in the order given in the algorithm. So this programming is very lengthy and increase the complexity of the program and difficult to understand and modify the program. And what are the drawback of this procedure or this method here is program will be very lengthy, and once the program is very lengthy and the debugging of the program is difficult and it increase the complexity of the program, and it may not be so easy to understand or modify the program anywhere or in between anywhere in the program. That is the main drawback of this. And this technique is used in programming languages such as C and Pascal. Now you are learning C++ language and we have C language as a Pascal language. These two languages follow these type of programming. So this is procedural programming where it focuses on the algorithm of a program. Now let us move on to next slide. So next one is object-oriented programming, or generally we say OOPS, O-O-P-S, or it is object-oriented programming or object-oriented programs. So this is another method of programming. So here object-oriented programming is a concept that combines both data and the functions that operates on the data into a single unit called object. So here this OOPS concept is based on the object. So what is an object now? So inside the object you find the data as well as the function which operates on this data. So this is the definition of object-oriented programming. It works with the concept of object. Object contains data and functions in one unit called object. So object is an identifiable entity with some characters and behavior. This is the definition of an object. So object-oriented programming is the definition of object is It is an identifiable entity with some characteristics and behavior. So this is one of the definition of the object. So here, if anything, we can take an example as an object. Suppose I can take an example as a table is an object for us. So table is an object. Table has its own, it is an entity with some characteristics and behavior. So the table, what are the characteristics? We can talk about size of a table, height of the table, color of the table, everything else comes under characters, and behavior. The purpose it remains, we are using it for supporting. So this is an object. So another advantage of OOPS here is we are going to connect real world object into programming. So here I can take an also example of fan. Like if I take an example of fan as an object here, so it has its characteristics. Means if I talk about the color of the fan, size of the fan, or wings or blades of a fan, all comes under characteristics. And what is behavior? Means what is the purpose of this? It turns or rotates as and when the switches are on. That is an object. So here in this programming concept, we are connecting real world object into programming. That is one advantage of OOPS concepts or object oriented programming. And here everything we are working with an object. It is an identifiable entity with some characteristics and behavior. Now let us move on to next slide. So now let us see object oriented programming. In this programming, now this is, look at this object A. What is an object? Object is an entity which has some characteristics and behavior. In this concept here, the data represent your characteristics. So here this data represent characteristics, and this functions, it represents behavior. So what is an object? It is an entity with some characteristics and behavior. So here we are connecting the characteristics with respect to data and the behavior of any object with represent with functions in programming. So this is an object, and this is object A, this is another object B, and another object C, and this is one entity. So here inside an object you find data as well as functions, or it is inside one unit, that is characteristics and behavior. These two are present inside one unit called an object. So this method of programming is nothing but object oriented programming, and in this method the class plays an important role. So what is a class? Class is nothing but a group of objects which share common properties and relationship or behavior. So first definition what you have learned is an object. Next one is class. So what is a class? Class is nothing but a group of objects of similar behavior and characteristics. Now I can take an example of a car. Car is an object. So if I talk about a car, inside a car it has so many features. Now I can talk about the color, size, model, everything of a car, and inside that it has its own functions. For example, brake is a function, accelerator is a function, and your ignition key, ignition is a function. So if I talk about an object, car is an object, so it has characteristics and behavior, nothing but functions. And what is a class then? So a group of objects. Suppose if I take a car showroom, if you take an example of a showroom of a car, so in the showroom you find different number of cars, so many numbers of cars of same features. That is, we can take an example of a class. So what is a class? Class is a group of objects which share common properties or common characteristics and behavior. And another simple example is, I can take a student in a classroom as an object. Suppose if I say all the students in one class is in one section. For example, I can say first PUC computer science student, section A. It is section A is the class, and inside the section A we have number of students of computer science. Here each students are nothing but, you can take it an example like an individual object. So that is also an example of class. So here I am connecting these objects or real world examples into programming. That is another benefit of object oriented programming concept. So this is a class. So another definition is class. It is a group of objects of similar behavior and characteristics. Now let us go to the next slide. Next one is, what are the characteristics of OOPs here, or object oriented programs? So one is modularity, abstraction, and all these are with respect to data. So it's a data modularity, data abstraction, data encapsulation, data inheritance, polymorphism, dynamic binding, and message passing. These are the different features of OOPs. Now let us learn the definition of these things one by one. Now first one is modularity. So in our previous chapter we have learned what is a module. So what is a module? A smallest unit of a program is called a module. So we used to give example like, suppose a complex problem given to students and the same problem is divided into a number of sub-programs are called modules. So modularity is a technique adopted to divide the complex problem into number of self-contained independent programming segment called modularity. Here we are dividing the complex problem into small programs or sub-problems are called as module, and here these module what you are going to divide into sub-programs are referred as independent entity. In the sense, it is a separate program, it is a separate part of a program that can be written and executed and can be tested independently. So that is it is an independent programming fragment or a segment, and the process of this method of programming is called modularity. That is modularity. Now let us see the next definition. Here, data abstraction. Data abstraction. So here it is an act which represents the essential features of an entity without including explanation or background details about it. So what is the meaning of this? So data abstraction. So here to the real world, it shows only the few characters and other things are hidden inside. And if I take an example like a TV is an object. Suppose if TV is an object, so we are all watching a TV, we can watch different types of programs from the TV, but inside technology, that is, we are least bothered, we are not at all considered the technology behind it. And inside the TV, you talk about the TV unit, inside that there are so many technologies and so many components will be there, so we are least bothered about the technology and how it functions. So that is, everything is hidden, but we can watch the program, okay, we can watch enjoying the program. That is abstraction. That is one of the example. And another example is nothing but data abstraction is, like a very good example is your student's mascot. Suppose if you look at the mascot of, for example, 10th standard mascot. If you look at the mascot of a student, it shows only the academic performance of a student. And other than that, students may be having so many other activities, those things are hidden. So your mascot is only an abstraction of a student object. So this is nothing but data abstraction. Next definition is data encapsulation. So what is encapsulation? This is wrapping up of data and function into single unit called data encapsulation. So this is, we are covering the data. We are wrapping the data for the sake of security. For the sake of security, we are covering the data so that outside the class, no one should access the data easily. That is the concept of data encapsulation. Now we have learned the definition of class. So class is a group of objects. So inside the class, we have data as well as functions. So what is wrapping here is nothing but data encapsulation is nothing but, so the data inside the class and function inside the class cannot be accessed directly. That is the meaning of the concept of data encapsulation. The concept is wrapping up of the data and functions from the external user or from the others for direct accessing the data as well as functions. So this is a sort of security. So this is data encapsulation. Next one is data inheritance. Now, all of you know the meaning of the term inheritance, that is biological inheritance, meaning suppose we can say whether maybe we are students, you may look like your brother or maybe sister or parents, father, mother, or any of from your family. See, that is, we say biological inheritance means few of you or few characters of yours resembles your one of a member of your family. So that we say here acquiring the property from our parents, that is inheritance, that is biological inheritance. But with respect to programming concept, with respect to OOPS here inheritance is nothing but an object of one class acquires the properties of another class. And here we are talking about class now. Then with the two classes, one class 1 or class 2. So here one class acquires the properties from other class. That is the concept of inheritance. So here the deriving a new class from the existing class is called inheritance. So this is nothing but data inheritance. For example, suppose if I take example, this is a class A. This is class A and it is class B. There are two different independent classes. So here, and this class has data as well as functions. And this can also be having its own data and functions. So this class A acquires a few properties from this class B. It is called as data inheritance. So in this example, this B is A acquires the properties from B. So this B is called referred as a parent class. It is a parent class and this is child class. It is child class. So here this child class is a type 1 class, independent class. It acquires the properties from its parent. So here the concept of parent as well as child class. So this is the data inheritance. Next one is polymorphism. So what is polymorphism? This is ability of a message to be processed in more than one form. So the simple example is we can say that the object, or we can say the behavior of an object, of the same object, depends on the circumstances or situation. For example, I can give a simple example like student. If I take student as an example, as an object. So your student behavior with your class teacher is different. With your, if I take the principal, with the principal is different. With your behavior with the friends and as well as the behavior with your parents, all these are different. It depends on the situation as well as circumstances. So similarly, a one object, it behaves differently depending on the circumstances. So another example is I can talk about a keyboard. If you look at the keyboard, on the keyboard here, one key has more than one function. That is, for example, if you use one key with the shift, you'll give one character. Without shift, if you press it, it gives another character. Here, one key, it has two functions. With shift or without shift, that is also an example of polymorphism. So it is a behavior of an object or data depending on the situation. That is polymorphism. Next concept is dynamic binding. So what is dynamic binding? First of all, let me see what is binding. Binding means linking of procedure call to the code to be executed when it is called. And here in previous chapter we have learned what is procedural programming. So in procedural programming, just remember, just to recall what you have learned in procedural programming. So in procedural programming, so it is the main program consists of only the list of procedure calls. So as and when the compiler executes in the main function, there you find number of procedure calls. So first it go to as and when it executes the procedure 1, then it directly the control transfer to its procedure, the main function. So that is the method of procedural programming. So it's going to link as and when the procedure is called in the main function. So this binding means it's going to link the particular appropriate procedure in the main function. Now dynamic binding means code procedure call is known at the time of programming execution. And here, as and when the procedure call is called or invoked, then only we will come to know the program or procedure to be executed. So this is dynamic binding. Next one is message passing. Another feature is message passing. So it is a message passing objects and invoking the functions by objects by sending a message is known as message passing. Or in other words, we can say it's the communication among different objects. So this is nothing but a message passing. So here one message will be passed on to second object 1, then similarly object 2, object 3, it goes on. Suppose if there are 10 objects, so at last it reaches the object 10. So the first message we are going to pass for the object 1, the same message reaches the object 10 in the same order. So that is a message passing or communication between two different objects in a class. This is message passing. Now let us see what are all the benefits of OOPS concepts or OOPS programming. The first one is the real world entity. We are going to compare, or we are going to take example of real world entities into a programming. Here I have taken example of a student or a table or a fan or a car. All these are real world entities. See, while I am explaining the concept, I have taken the example of all these. That is advantage of, that is one thing, one benefit of OOPS concept. Next, data inheritance. This is what you have seen now. This is another advantage. And what is the advantage of this? Code reusability. So another advantage of inheritance means once the code has been written, same code can be used elsewhere or with different classes under different application. That another advantage of this. Then data hiding, that is encapsulation. It's going to secure the program. There's another benefit of OOPS. Next, multiple instances can be created. Work can be divided easily. This is modularity. And it is easily upgraded from small to large system. It is possible. Next, complexity can be easily managed with the concept of modularity or modularization. Next, message passing is a concept helps the object to communicate and share data. These are all the benefits of OOPS. Now let us see what are the disadvantages of OOPS. Here, the special skills such as thinking in terms of design skill, programming skill, and object is required for a programmer. So here one of the drawback is that, and one should have an experience in all respect with the thinking or with creativity or in its programming skill. Next one is proper planning and design required before programming using OOPS technique. Yes, here as we know the characteristics of OOPS, so based on that it has to be pre-planned. Next, adaptability of flow diagram and object-oriented programming using classes object is complex process. So as we can say, theoretically we say it is possible for us to implement real world object into programming concept, but in reality it is a complex process. To convert real world problem into object programming is difficult. Same point here. And the classes are overly generalized. The meaning is, now we have given a definition. It is a group of objects of similar behavior and characteristics. And what are the characteristics we have learned so far? Those can be implemented. So we have overly generalized, and in the sense it is very difficult for us to implement all the features of OOPS with the concept of classes and objects. Let us move on to next slide. Next one is application. What are the applications of OOPS? Here we are using in graphic applications, and CAD/CAM, it is an engineering software to work with in the field of mechanical engineering. And object-oriented database, you know what a database is? A collection of data. And user interface, such as Windows, there is a user interface to the programming concept. And real-time system, it is a real-time system or online system. That is an example for this. Very good example, real-time system is, nowadays we are getting the weather forecast is updated every time. As and when you see either mobile or a computer or wherever any devices, you will get the temperature or the weather report immediately. That is at that particular time. That is an example of real-time system. That is an advantage, and those things can be implemented through OOPS concepts. Next, simulation and modeling. I mean, we can use this concept for simulation, in the sense, it is almost equivalent to get the final product. Before that, we can simulate with different examples or different objects. Then artificial intelligence and expert system and client server system. See, these are all the applications or where we can make use of this concept in programming. Dear students, so in this session, we have learned the definition of OOPS and what are the features of OOPS, and also we have learned the different definition of features of object-oriented programming with applications, benefits, and disadvantages. Now, let us continue our discussion in my next session. Thank you so much.